सको दोहनमात्रं गृहमेदिनाम् अवेक्षते महाभागा चीति कुर्वंस्तदाश्रमम् सगोदोहनमात्रं हि गृहेषु गृहमेदिनाम् अवेक्षते महाभागः चीति कुर्वंस्तदाश्रमम् सगोदोहनमात्रं हि गृहेषु गृहमेदिनाम् अवेक्षते महाभागा तीर्थे कुर्वंस्तदाश्रमम्. Word to word translation. Saha, he, Sukadeva Goswami. Dohana matram. Only for the time of milking the cow. He, certainly. Gruheshu, in the house. Gruhamedinam, of the householders. Avekshate, waits. Mahabhagaha, the most fortunate. Tirthi, pilgrimage. Kurvan, transforming. Tat ashramam, the residence. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. He, Shukadeva Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked. And he did this just to sanctify the residence. Purport. Shukadeva Goswami met Emperor Parikshit and explained the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. He was not accustomed to stay at any householder's residence for more than half an hour at the time of milking the cow. And he would just take alms from the fortunate householder. That was to sanctify the residence by his auspicious presence. Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami is an ideal preacher established in the transcendental position. From his activities, those who are in the renounced order of life and dedicated to the mission of preaching the message of Godhead should learn that they have no business with householders save and except to enlighten them in transcendental knowledge. Such asking for alms from the householder should be for the purpose of sanctifying his home. One who is in the renounced order of life should not be allured by the glamour of the householder's worldly possessions and thus become subservient to worldly man. For one who is in the renounced order of life, this is much more dangerous than drinking poison and committing suicide. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gnananjana Sharakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yenam Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Itinamine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktarunda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He, Shukadeva Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked. And he did this just to sanctify the residence. So we see here an important lesson in our spiritual lives is being described by Srila Prabhupada in this verse. In the Shikshashtaka, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu talks about, what are some important things for devotees to practice. Right? Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam, va jagadisha kamaye. So, na dhanam, right? One should not hanker for wealth. Na janam, followers. Sundarim, kavitam. These aspects of, when you are a preaching organization like ISKCON, like the Hare Krishna movement, we are invariably surrounded by these things. Right? We are a very big organization, international organization. We have very opulent temples, facilities, and automatically devotees, respect preachers, followers automatically come. All these are all natural aspects of a preaching organization. So, but how do you maintain the required standards while doing what is essential for preaching is what Srila Prabhupada is talking about here. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a description of how when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was starting on his South India tour, he visits the house of Kurma Brahmana. And in that description, it is said that the Kurma Brahmana, he was so enlivened by being in the presence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was about to leave and go to the next place, he was very, very inspired to join him. And then he begs Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, please give me permission to renounce this householder life and join with you. And I'm done with this. I really want to, engage fully in preaching. At that time, very interestingly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives him a little different instruction. Right? He says, Yare deho tare kaha Krishna upadesh, amar agneya guru hena tara ye desh. That's a very famous verse that we always keep hearing. He says, Yare dekho tare kaho Krishna upadesh. Instruct whoever you meet in the teachings of Sri Krishna. Amar agneya guru hai tara ye desh. On my order, become a spiritual master and deliver everyone in this land. Here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving us the secret of how, even though one is a householder, one has duties, responsibilities, how can we remain fixed in Krishna consciousness, in the preaching mood. The important thing is to keep Krishna in the center of our lives and engage fully in preaching activities. Now, what does that really mean in practical terms for all of us? It means that we should follow Srila Prabhupada's instruction of simple living and high thinking. And there has to be some little bit of stretching of our abilities, of our day-to-day practices, so that there is some sense of austerity, there is some sense of pushing ourselves for Srila Prabhupada's movement. We have so much of opportunity to preach, so many different ways we can engage in Prabhupada's mission. If we are able to stretch ourselves for that little extra bit and get used to a lifestyle which helps us share the spiritual wisdom and engage others in Krishna service. It's very important that we learn to have a simple lifestyle. This morning we were reading Queen Kunti's prayers. Anybody remembers one very nice prayer Queen Kunti says in this context? Huh? Namo akinchana vittaya. Right? Janmaishwari shruta shribir edaman madah puman naivartati abhidhatum vai tvam akinchana gochara. Right? My Lord, your Lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. Akinchana. One who is on the path of material progress. We talk about the 4 aspects of trying to improve our material life. Janma, Aishwarya, Shruta and Shri. Right? Everybody wants a nice birth. Right? A birth in a nice situation in the higher planetary systems. Janma, Aishwarya, lot of wealth. Shruta, intelligence. Shri, and beauty. So one who is entangled in these 4 aspects, or is having value for these 4 aspects, if we do that, then it becomes very difficult for somebody to very ardently engage in Krishna consciousness. Well, what happens is that one has to internalize the importance of practicing renunciation. And the renunciation that Srila Prabhupada taught us to practice is Yukta Vairagya. Right? It's not an artificial renunciation of of things. There was once Srila Prabhupada was preaching in West Bengal, and there was one a local saintly person. If somebody came to him and gave him money, he said, no, don't bring money in front of me, right? Swamiji doesn't even see money, doesn't touch money. So this is the common, ways in which many saintly people behave. But when Prabhupada, somebody came to offer money, he said, how much do you have? Prabhupada was always very practical in these matters. Like, Lakshmi belongs with Vishnu, Krishna. So to rightfully, engage Lakshmi in the service of the Lord is the right way to engage. Not artificially renounce and, think that is the way to advance in spiritual life. So there is a paradox here, right? So that's why for our personal lifestyle, we have to live very simple lives. We have to accept, what comes of its own accord. Here, Shukadeva Goswami is teaching the example. He wouldn't stay longer than it takes to milk a cow. Right? And there is actually a particular name for this activities of a renunciant. Right? Because we say Madhukari. Madhukari, the example of a honeybee is given. A bee will, collect a little honey from a lot of flowers. And it doesn't stay in one place, right? It just goes and collects so many different little honey from so many flowers. Similarly, the practicing of Madhukari is when one takes a little alms from each householder. This practice helps householders also, if you're straining too much on one householder, it becomes difficult for them to remain charitable. So you take a little from each person, and so that way they are also enthused to give, and we are also learning the art of being dependent on the Lord completely. So this practice of Madhukari was one of the elements of a person who was practicing the renounced order of life. Now we as preachers can emulate this in our own lives of the simple living, high thinking principles that we talked about. So what does this mean in practical terms? Practical terms, it means accepting only what is needed for preaching purposes. As Grihasthas, Srila Prabhupada gave guidelines on how one should practice. He quoted, Rupa Goswami's, Sanatana Goswami's principles. And in that, Prabhupada used to quote a lot Kulavecha Sridhara. If you remember, Kulavecha Sridhara was a very simple, poor Brahmana. He used to live by selling these leaves. You get these leaf plates. He used to just go collect different leaf plates and used to sell. And he used to make a very small living, in a few annas a day. But even with that meager living, he would give 50% of that for serving the Lord, and then he would use 50% for his personal benefit. So this was the principle Srila Prabhupada emphasized. In Kulavacha Sridhara's example, there was once the Lord was, he would always go to his shop and he would haggle with him. That was the pastime he used to have. And he would say, how much for this? Oh, you're robbing me. Asking so much for just for a few leaf plates. And Kulavacha Sridhara would say, no, this is the right price, this is what I'm charging everybody, this is very less. And they would, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would haggle with him like that. That was his pastime with him. Once Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in his, was manifesting his full opulence of the Vishnu form. And in that mood, he called and he told the devotees, go get me Kulavacha Sridhara. And when Kulavacha Sridhara came in front of him, he asked him, please ask for a boon. Now, Kulavacha Sridhara had a very, very simple life. He used to live in a thatched hut, which used to have rain would come fall through, and very, very meager living he was living. When he was asked to ask for a boon, he refused to ask anything. He said, no, what can I ask you? You've given me Krishna consciousness, what else do I want? You've given me Krishna. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu insisted, no, you have to ask for a boon. Then he says, my boon is, please continue to always give me an opportunity to haggle with you, for my selling of my leaves. Like that is the boon I desire from you. So you see here, it's a perfect example. It is not that, you need to have certain level of wealth and opulence. So then I can practice, giving 50% as a householder. When I have very less, I cannot give, it's difficult. No, it's an ideal example to follow. But it is all in the mindset of a person. It doesn't matter the actual amount or what this thing is. If you have that mindset, if you have that dedication and commitment, one can find ways to do that. Just imagine, if everybody in this world was practicing, these principles of a householder. I was recently talking to somebody, and then there was a discussion on how the cost of living is so much, how the whole world is straining as more and more countries are becoming developed, and their per capita consumption is increasing. The world is getting strained. And, we see that resources are being depleted. So when this discussion was going on, I was just saying, if you make somebody a devotee, that's the easiest way of reducing the overall load on this universe. Right? I was just explaining to that person, you see, at most, once you become a devotee, how much will you spend? What will you spend on? Even in an expensive place like California, if you add up everything that a brahmachari or even a vanaprastha, like somebody living in the temple, maybe you will spend 25,000 per person. 30,000, you're already stretching it, right? Even though, it's such an expensive a place to live. If a whole society lived like this, then there will be so much of opulence that people want to give. What will you do with the money? Use it in the Lord's service. Right? So that is why, Prabhupada gave us very practical things. The Grihastha ashrama is the main ashrama that takes care of the rest of the ashramas. Right? The brahmacharis, they are meant to engage in studying and reading. The grihasthas are the only ones who produce wealth. Right? The vanaprastha is in a stage of renouncing and engaging more and more. Right? Vasudeva Kutumbakam, right? Where yesterday also we were hearing. This is the mindset that one has to develop as a vanaprastha. And as a sannyasi, that's what you practice full time. So grihastha is the only one who produces wealth in a society, and the grihasthas are expected to take care of the rest of the ashramas. So that is why, Prabhupada gave this principle of giving 50% of your income for spiritual master's mission. And if one is able to practice that, then doesn't matter where a grihastha, you're a sannyasi, or a vanaprastha, you're practicing true renunciation. So, we see here, Srila Prabhupada is giving us the mood of a preacher, what should one do, how should one live. And he personally practiced this and showed by example. At the age of 70, when he was well settled in such a wonderful place as Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan, he felt the urge, the strong desire to please his spiritual master's wish for him to go and preach in the Western world. And he came over here in the middle of, this unknown place where he didn't have anybody, he didn't know what will happen. And it is said that the year that he came was one of the strongest winters that New York area had experienced. And Srila Prabhupada taught by his personal example of how we can engage fully in the service of the Lord by engaging in preaching, by becoming fixed up in connecting everybody to Krishna, and thus we can practice Yukta Vairagya in very practical ways. Okay. We'll stop here. Anybody has any questions or comments? Yes?
We say 50%. It means 50% of the total salary or 50% of the what is left out after all the expenditures.
Very good question. We had a very long practical discussion on this in our temple. So the question is this 50% of salary or is 50% after all the expenses are done? Actually, we had a very practical discussion on this. Now, the way to think about it in a very, I'll give you some scientific reasoning for this answer. So what are you supposed to do with the rest of the 50%? We'll give you a clue. Right? What is the rest of the 50% supposed to be? 25%? Anybody remembers? 25% for expenses? Yeah, and 25% for emergencies. So that gives you answer right there. Because 25% is being used for your expenses and 25% for keeping for future family emergencies, that leaves you 50%. Now, we had a practical discussion whether this is 50% after you pay your taxes is okay. Because taxes the government is taking is not with you. So after tax deduction, whatever is left, 50% you can give. That's at the ideal level. See, one has to start somewhere. In fact, in Milpita's Yatra, when we are talking to devotees and inspiring them to take initiation and all that, we tell them saying, if you're going to take initiation, you need to show some level of commitment to Srila Prabhupada's mission. Right? If you look at all the brahmacharis, they're giving up their life. Right? They don't have a bank account, there is no this thing, they're completely 24/7 they're engaged. So grihasthas, who are wanting to take initiation, want to become fixed up, we are saying at least 10% of your income you should give. Start there. And 10% there, you're talking about gross income. Right? And then there is a range of spectrum, and then you can come to the point where you can give 50% of your tax deducted income. The whole idea is, different devotees are in different situations, practically, but we should stretch ourselves. If you're comfortable in one level, try to find ways to go to the next level, just a little bit, in every aspect of life. When you do that, you'll see that, your progression in spiritual life, it is accelerated. You can become complacent and say, oh, I'm happy with this, I'm doing it that. Then, once progress is also, slower. Ye etam prapadyante tam stateva bhajamyaham. As you surrender, so I'll reciprocate. Okay. And there are practical ways of doing that. It's a matter of, every aspect of life, there are different choices one can make. And I think, in fact, if all the grihasthas gave even 10% of their income for serving, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, we'll have 10 temples in New York or New Jersey, right? Reality is that, people are too attached. And if you're too attached, you have to give it up finally. Right? Mrityu sarva haraschaham. If you don't voluntarily give, involuntarily, Krishna will take it from you. So it's now a matter of what you want to do. Yes.
Another practical question. Does that 10% include the expenses that you incur towards facilitating seva?
In your house, huh? They're all very practical questions. See, reality is, Prabhupada actually said, if you are living within, I think he said, if you are living close to a temple, and there was a discussion, is like within 20 miles, 30 miles of a temple like that. He said that grihastha should have a very simple altar at home. And in fact, he said, you can have maybe Gaurnitai deities, small deities, and have a picture of the main deity of that temple. And keep the house worship very simple. The 10% is meant for Prabhupada's mission, preaching mission. And so the mood should be that. I feel that 10% is a very practical thing that anybody can follow. In fact, there are many devotees who are practicing 50%. I know one devotee who has very limited means, a grostha with very limited means. But that devotee regularly, whenever they come, they'll come and give me, their 50%. And I'm like, are you sure? I've asked the question. No, because I know that they have a very limited this thing. But they said, no, this is Prabhupada gave this instruction and I want to do this. And I've known this person for maybe 8-10 years now. Somehow Krishna arranges. And, so many different things happen. And that devotee is able to live a nice life. And I can only imagine Prabhupada and the Lord must be reciprocating with a lot of realizations in their lives. Ultimate thing is that missionaries' zeal should be there in everybody. That is not meant only for renunciants or full-time brahmacharis. That missionary zeal should be there in everybody. Anybody who is taken to spiritual life, we should have that. And then you will see your advancement in spiritual life will be very rapid. Okay. So we'll stop here. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Bol Premanande. Okay.